In the shadow of a crumbling tenement on the outskirts of Chicago, a boy named Elias Kane was left on a rain-soaked doorstep with nothing but a thin blanket and a handwritten note pinned to his chest. We can't afford him anymore. It was 1998, and his parents, young, desperate, drowning in debt from a failed business, vanished into the night, convinced that abandoning their 5-year-old son was the only way to give him a chance at something better. Or so they told themselves. Elias didn't find a better life right away. He bounced through foster homes, each one colder than the last. Some caregivers were kind but overwhelmed. Others saw him as just another mouth to feed. He learned early to rely on no one but himself. Sharp-eyed and quick-witted, he devoured books from library discard bins, teaching himself coding on ancient library computers after school. By 14, he'd built his first app, a simple tool for tracking lost pets. That went viral in local forums. A tech startup noticed, offered him an internship, and just like that, the abandoned boy stepped into a world of silicon and possibility. Years blurred into relentless ambition. Elias founded his first company at 19, an AI-driven logistics platform that revolutionized supply chains for small businesses. Investors swarmed. Acquisitions followed. By 30, he'd sold his third venture for billions, earning a spot on Forbes' youngest self-made billionaires list. The world called him a prodigy, a visionary. Tabloids dubbed him the orphan king of tech. But Elias never forgot the note, the doorstep, the emptiness. He built an empire not just for wealth, but to prove that abandonment couldn't define him. He kept his past private, buried under layers of boardrooms and private jets. Until one crisp autumn day in 2023, while walking anonymously through a bustling street market in a mid-sized town far from a Silicon Valley penthouse, he liked these disguised escapes to feel human again. Something caught his eye. There, huddled against a chain-link fence beside overflowing trash bins, sat an older couple. The man, gaunt and gray-bearded, held a cardboard sign, "Anything helps." Lost everything. The woman beside him, frail with tangled hair and eyes hollowed by years of hardship, clutched a tattered coat around her shoulders. They were begging, voices hoarse as they pleaded with passers-by who mostly averted their gaze. Elias stopped dead in his tracks. His heart slammed against his ribs like a glitch in flawless code. He knew those faces. Older, whether beyond recognition to most, but not to him. The slope of the man's shoulders. The way the woman nervously twisted a cheap ring on her finger. A habit she'd had even the faded family photos he'd once clung to. It was them. His parents. He stood frozen for what felt like hours, watching as a young mother dropped a few coins into their cup without a second glance. The man, his father, muttered a broken, "Thank you," while the woman, his mother, stared blankly at the ground, whispering apologies to no one. Elias's mind raced. Rage boiled first. How dare they? After leaving him like discarded trash, now they were the ones discarded by life? Then came a colder curiosity. What chain of failures had led them here? Bad investments? Addiction? Illness? Or just the cruel grind of a world that chews up the weak? He could walk away, turn his back as they once had, board his jet, and forget this ghost from his origin story. But Elias Kane wasn't built for simple revenge. He was built for mastery. Slipping on sunglasses and pulling up his hoodie, he approached slowly, dropping a $100 bill into their cup without a word. The woman's eyes widened as she looked up, and for a split second, recognition flickered. Or was it imagination? She blinked, confused, as he walked on. That night, in his hotel suite, Elias opened his laptop and began digging. Private investigators on retainer, discreet searches through public records, old addresses traced like lines of code. Within hours, he had their story. The business collapse that spiraled into gambling debts, evictions, a string of low-wage jobs lost to age and health issues. No family left to help them. No safety net. Just the streets. And now, the billionaire who'd risen from their abandonment held their fate in his hands. The next morning, disguised again, he returned to the same spot. They were there. Same fence, same desperation. This time, he sat on the curb nearby, pretending to scroll his phone, listening as they spoke in low tones about a shelter that had turned them away, about maybe trying a bigger city where begging paid better. His mother sighed. We made so many mistakes, Tom. That boy! If we'd kept him, maybe things would have been different. His father grunted. We were kids ourselves. Thought he'd get adopted by someone rich. Better off without us dragging him down. Elias's grip tightened on his phone. Better off? He almost laughed. He'd built empires from the void they left. But as the day wore on, something shifted. Watching them share a stale donut from a charity box, huddling for warmth as wind whipped through the market, he felt an unfamiliar pull. Not forgiveness, not yet, but power. Absolute, intoxicating power. He made a call. Quiet arrangements. A nondescript black car pulled up hours later, driven by one of his trusted aides posing as a social worker from a private foundation. Mr. and Mrs. Harrow, the aide said softly. They'd changed their name years ago, but Elias knew. We've heard about your situation. There's a program for folks like you. Housing, medical care, job training. No strings. Would you come with me? The couple exchanged wary glances, too tired to question miracles. They nodded, climbing into the car with trembling hope. Elias watched from across the street as they drove away, to a luxury rehab facility first, then a modest but comfortable apartment he'd anonymously funded, complete with groceries and a prepaid phone. He didn't reveal himself. Not yet. Weeks turned to months. Through hidden reports, he tracked their progress. Detox, therapy sessions where they finally confronted the guilt of that rainy night. Slow steps toward stability. His mother took art classes. His father fixed computers at a senior center. Ironic, Elias thought, given where his own skills began. And then one evening, Elias decided it was time. He arranged a meeting, not as the beggar they glimpsed, but as himself. The billionaire in a tailored suit, stepping out a chauffeured car in front of their new apartment building. As they opened the door, invited by a mysterious note to meet their benefactor, their faces drained of color. You, his mother whispered, hand flying to her mouth. Elias smiled, cool and unreadable. Hello, Mom. Dad. We have a lot to talk about. The apartment door hung open just enough for the late afternoon light to spill across the worn carpet inside. Elias stood on the threshold, hands in the pockets of his charcoal overcoat, his expression a mask of perfect calm that had unnerved boardrooms full of seasoned executives. But here, in this quiet hallway smelling faintly of fresh paint and lemon cleaner, the air felt thicker. His mother, Laura, though he had never been allowed to call her that, took one unsteady step back, her hand still pressed to her lips. His father, Tom, froze halfway out of the recliner he'd been dozing in, remote control slipping from his fingers to the floor with a dull clatter. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchenette and the distant murmur of traffic far below. Elias broke the silence first, his voice low and even. May I come in? Laura nodded mutely, stepping aside as though her body moved on instinct rather than decision. Tom remained half-risen, eyes wide, mouth working soundlessly. Elias crossed the threshold and closed the door behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded final. The apartment was modest but immaculate, exactly what he had instructed. New furniture in neutral tones, a flat-screen television mounted on the wall, bookshelves already stocked with classics, and art supplies for Laura, a small desk in the corner, holding a brand-new laptop for Tom. Everything chosen with clinical precision to feel like a fresh start without screaming extravagance. Elias removed his coat, draping it over the back of a dining chair, as though he belonged there. He didn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But he moved like he did. You've been wondering who your benefactor is, he said, turning to face them fully. Now you know. Laura found her voice first, thin and trembling. Elias, my God. You're him. The man from the news. Kane Technologies. All those magazines. Her gaze darted over his face, searching for the little boy she'd left behind, finding only sharp angles and eyes that held no warmth she could recognize. Tom finally sank back into the recliner, looking suddenly older than his 60 years. We hoped you'd been adopted, that you'd had a good life. I did, Elias replied, the words clipped. Eventually, after the group homes. after the foster families who collected checks, but not much else. After teaching myself to code on computers older than I was, because no one's going to hand me anything. Laura's eyes filled with tears that spilled over without permission. We were drowning. Elias. The business failed. The debts piled up. We couldn't even feed ourselves some weeks. We thought. You thought leaving a 5-year-old on a doorstep in the rain was mercy, he finished for her. His tone carried no shout, no accusation raised in volume. Yet it cut deeper than any scream could have. You thought someone else would fix what you broke. Tom rubbed a hand over his face. We were 25, scared out of our minds. We told ourselves you'd be better off. And were you? Elias asked quietly. Better off without me dragging you down? The question hung in the air like smoke. Neither parent could meet his eyes. Elias walked slowly to the window, looking out over the small city park below where children chased each other through fallen leaves. I used to imagine this moment, he said, back still to them. Thousands of versions of it. Sometimes I'd scream until my throat bled. Sometimes I'd say nothing at all and just walk away. Sometimes I'd have you arrested for abandonment. Sometimes, he paused, a faint, bitter smile touching his lips. Sometimes I'd forgive you on the spot, because a little boy inside me still wanted his mom and dad. He turned then, but I'm not that little boy anymore. Laura took a tentative step forward. Elias, please. We've spent every day since regretting it. When we saw you on television, when we read about what you built, we were proud, but it hurt so much knowing we had no right to be. Regret? Elias repeated, tasting the word. Interesting, because for years I built an entire life around never needing anyone again. Every acquisition, every patent, every zero added to my net worth was another brick in the wall between me and that doorstep. And then one day I see you both holding a cardboard sign, and suddenly all those bricks feel insufficient. Tom's voice cracked. We never expected anything from you. Never thought we'd even see you again. Whatever you've done for us these past months, housing us, the doctors, the therapy, it's more than we deserve. That's the thing, Elias said, stepping closer. You're right. It is more than you deserve. But I didn't do it for you. I did it because I needed to see if I could. If the man who clawed his way out of nothing could look at the people who put him there and choose something other than destruction. He pulled out a dining chair and sat, gesturing for them to do the same. After a hesitant beat, they obeyed, perching on the edge of the sofa like guests in their own home. I've read the therapy notes, he continued matter-of-factly. I know about the gambling after the business collapsed, the eviction notices, the nights in the car before the streets. I know you talk about me in sessions, how you convinced yourselves I was better off, how that lie kept you sane. Laura was openly crying now. Tom stared at the floor. I could end this tomorrow, Elias said softly. Revoke the funding. Put you back on the street. You'd survive, maybe, or you wouldn't. And the world would call it justice. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. But that would be too easy. Too small. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a slim leather folder, placing it on the coffee table between them. Inside were documents, trust agreements, property deeds, medical insurance policies, even a modest annuity that would guarantee them comfort for life. This is yours, he said. No conditions. No requirement to see me again, to call me son, to pretend we're a family. You'll never have to beg again. You'll never have to wonder if the next winter will be your last on the street. Tom stared at the folder as though it might bite him. Why? Because I can, Elias answered. Because I've spent 25 years proving I'm stronger than what you did to me. And strength isn't just surviving. It's deciding what happens next. Laura reached out a trembling hand, but stopped short of touching the folder. And what do you want from us? Elias considered this for a long moment. Nothing you can give me in a single conversation. Maybe over time, honesty. The real story, not the bedtime version you told yourselves. Maybe answers to questions I've carried since I was 5. Maybe someday I'll want to know what my laughter sounded like to you before you left. Or what my favorite food was. Stupid little things normal parents remember. He stood, slipping his coat back on. But today, I just wanted you to see me, to know that the boy you abandoned didn't break. He built something bigger than your worst mistakes. At the door, he paused, hand on the knob. There's a car downstairs. Whenever you're ready to visit the new community center, I'm opening next month. They need volunteers who understand what it's like to have nothing. If you ever feel like giving back, they'll be glad to have you. No one there will know who you are to me. Laura rose unsteadily. Will we see you again? Elias looked at her for a long time. I don't know, he admitted. But for the first time since I was 5, the choice is mine. He stepped into the hallway and pulled the door closed behind him, the soft click echoing once more. Down in the lobby, he paused, leaning against the wall for a moment as the weight of the encounter settled over him. Not lighter, not heavier, just different. A chapter neither closed nor fully open. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Board meeting in Seattle tomorrow, jet-fueled and ready. Elias straightened, smoothed his coat, and walked out into the crisp evening air. Somewhere above him, in the apartment he'd given them, 2 people were holding documents that guaranteed their future while grappling with a past that could never be undone. And somewhere inside the billionaire who had everything, a 5-year-old boy watched carefully to see what would happen next. Weeks passed. The annuity payments began appearing in their account on the 1st of every month, steady and anonymous. Laura took the art classes seriously, filling sketchbooks with images she hadn't dared touch in decades. Landscapes, portraits, tentative attempts at drawing a child's face from fractured memory. Tom spent hours at the community center, teaching basic computer skills to teenagers who reminded him painfully of what he'd missed. Elias watched from a distance, reports arriving encrypted on his private server. He told himself it was oversight, ensuring his investment wasn't wasted. But late at night, when the Silicon Valley mansion felt too large and too quiet, he opened the files and studied the small updates. Laura's first gallery showing a local cafe, Tom fixing a kid's laptop, and the grateful hug that followed. One Thursday in early spring, an unfamiliar number appeared on his phone. He almost let it go to voicemail. Hello. A hesitant breath on the other end. It's Laura. You're Laura. He sat down slowly at his desk. Hi. I wasn't sure you'd answer. A pause. We've been volunteering at the center, like you suggested. There's a boy there, Marcus. He's 9. Been in 4 foster homes already. Reminds me, her voice caught. He asked if someone could help him build a website for his drawings. Elias closed his eyes. And Tom's been working with him after hours. The kid's got talent. Real talent. We were wondering if maybe you'd like to see it. No pressure. Just if you ever have time. The line was quiet for her so long she thought he'd hung up. I'll have my assistant clear an afternoon next week, he said finally. Send the details. Thank you, she whispered, as though the words weren't nearly enough. When the call ended, Elias stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, watching lights flicker on across San Francisco. He felt something shift again, smaller this time, like a single line of code finally compiling correctly after years of errors. He didn't know if this was forgiveness. He wasn't sure he believed in it as a destination. But perhaps it was motion, forward motion, toward something undefined. The following Wednesday, he arrived at the community center incognito, baseball cap pulled low, blending with volunteers in jeans and hoodies. He watched from the doorway as Tom knelt beside a small boy with tight curls and intense eyes, both of them hunched over a laptop screen alive with bright colors and clumsy but promising web design. Laura spotted him first. She didn't approach, just offered a small nod from across the room, eyes shining with something that might have been hope. Elias stayed for an hour. He didn't introduce himself to Marcus, didn't reveal who funded the new computers gleaming on every desk. He simply observed the scene, his father laughing at something the boy said, his mother bringing over juice boxes for the group. When he left, no one except Laura noticed. She watched him go, hands clasped tightly in front of her as though in prayer. Outside, Elias paused on the sidewalk, breathing in the warm spring air laced with cut grass and possibility. His phone buzzed again. Another board vote, another acquisition on the table worth hundreds of millions. He silenced it. For the first time in decades, He had somewhere else he needed to be tomorrow. Not a meeting, not a deal, just a community center where a 9-year-old was learning to code, guided by a man trying, in his fractured way, to make up for a lifetime of absence. Elias slipped into the backseat of his car and gave the driver a new address. Not the airport, not the office. "Take me to the waterfront," he said. "I feel like walking." As the city rolled past the tinted windows, he allowed himself the smallest, most dangerous luxury of all, wondering what might come next. And for now, that was enough. The waterfront path stretched ahead under a sky painted in fading gold, and Elias walked it slowly, hands in his pockets, letting the salt-tinged breeze unravel the knots in his chest. For weeks after that quiet afternoon at the community center, he kept returning. Not every day, not even every week, but often enough that the volunteers began to gnaw at the familiar stranger in the baseball cap who lingered in doorways, watching coding classes and art workshops without ever stepping fully into the light. Marcus, the 9-year-old with the wild curls and fearless imagination, finished his website one rainy Saturday. It was bright and chaotic and beautiful. Digital drawings of superheroes who looked suspiciously like the kids in the center, each with a backstory typed in careful, misspelled prose. When the site went live on a free host, the boy ran through the room shouting for everyone to come see. Tom hoisted him onto his shoulders so he could show the screen to the crowd, and Laura stood beside them, tears streaming down her face as she applauded louder than anyone. Elias watched from the back, unseen. Something warm and dangerous bloomed inside him. Pride, maybe, or the echo of a feeling he'd buried long ago. He left before they could spot him, but not before slipping an envelope into the suggestion box. A grant proposal already approved, funding full scholarships for every child in the program to attend summer tech camp. Anonymous, of course. Summer came, and with it change. Marcus's website caught the attention of a local news station. A segment aired. Boy from foster care builds digital dream world. And suddenly the community center was flooded with donations, new computers, corporate sponsors. Elias read the articles on his private jet, 30,000 feet above the country, and allowed himself a rare, unguarded smile. Laura's art began to sell. Not just at the cafe anymore. Real galleries took notice of her raw, haunting pieces. Doorsteps in pouring rain, empty swings at twilight, children's silhouettes reaching for hands that weren't there. Critics call her work a meditation on loss and reclamation. She signed every painting with her maiden name, the one she'd shared with Elias before everything shattered. Tom, meanwhile, found purpose he hadn't known he was capable of. He started a mentorship circle for older teens aging out of foster care, teaching them the practical magic of code, how to turn nothing into something functional and beautiful. Attendance grew. Kids who had trusted, no one began to trust him. And Elias kept watching, kept funding, kept choosing to stay in the shadows. He told himself it was control. That distance preserved his power. But late at night, when insomnia drove him to the balcony of whichever mansion or penthouse he occupied that week, he admitted the truth. He was afraid. Afraid that if he stepped closer, the old wounds would reopen. Afraid that forgiveness might demand more than he had left to give. Then came the invitation. A handwritten card arrived at his office. No return address, just Laura's careful script on heavy cream paper. "We're having a small exhibition at the center next month." It read, "Your father and I will be honored if you came. Not as the benefactor, not as the billionaire, just as Elias, if you're ready." He stared at the card for days, carried it in his breast pocket through board meetings and international calls. Finally, on the morning of the show, he canceled his schedule, boarded a commercial flight like a normal person, and drove himself to the center in a rented sedan. The parking lot was full. Strings of soft white lights crisscrossed the courtyard. Families, kids, volunteers, local press, everyone mingled under a perfect October sky. Banners fluttered. Reclamation, art code, and second chances. Inside, the walls glowed with Laura's paintings. In the main room, large screens displayed projects from the kids. Marcus's site now polished and expanded. Interactive stories built by teens Tom had mentored. A live band of young musicians played in the corner. Elias slipped in quietly, cap low, blending with the crowd. He moved from piece to piece, heart pounding harder with every step. Then he saw it. Centered on the largest wall, lit by its own spotlight, was a new painting he hadn't known about. A triptych, massive and breathtaking. The left panel. A rainy doorstep. A small boy in a thin blanket. Note pinned to his chest. Parents' shadows retreating into darkness. The middle panel. The same boy older, alone in a library glowing with computer screens, building world from light and code while storms raged outside. The right panel. A man in silhouette standing at the edge of a vast, luminous city skyline, arms outstretched, not in triumph, but an offering. Below him, smaller figures reached up, children, families, hands linking into a chain that stretched all the way back to the doorstep. At the bottom, in delicate gold script, to the boy who turned absence into possibility. We see you now. Elias stood frozen, breath caught in his throat. People passed around him, murmuring admiration, but he heard nothing except the roar of his own blood. A gentle hand touched his elbow. He turned to find Laura beside him, older but radiant in a simple blue dress, eyes shining with fear and hope in equal measure. "You came," she whispered. He couldn't speak, just nodded. Tom appeared on his other side, grayer but straighter than he'd been on the street that fateful day, wearing a volunteer badge pinned proudly to his shirt. "We didn't know if you would," Tom said quietly. "But we wanted you to know this." He gestured to the room, the art, the children laughing and creating. "This is because of you, not your money. You, the strength you found when we gave you none." Marcus ran up then, breathless. "Mr. Tom, the reporter wants—" "Oh." He stopped, staring up at Elias with sudden wide-eyed recognition. You're the guy from the magazines. The one who," he looked back and forth between Elias and his parents, piecing it together with a child's brutal clarity. "You're their son." The room seemed to quiet, as if the crowd sensed the weight of the moment. Elias knelt to Marcus's level. "I am," he said, voice rough. "And I hear you built something incredible." Marcus beamed, fearlessly taking Elias's hand and pulling him toward the screens. "Come see. I added a new hero. He's a coder who saves lost kids by building doors that lead to safe places." Elias let himself be led. He spent the evening not as the billionaire, not as a ghost, but as a man among people who had begun to heal because he had refused to let brokenness win. Later, when the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, the three of them, Elias, Laura, Tom, stood alone before the triptych. Laura spoke first, voice trembling but steady. "We will never stop being sorry, but we will spend every day we have left being grateful, and try and be worthy of the miracle you became." Tom added, "You didn't just save us, son. You showed us what rising looks like." Elias looked at the painting, at the chain of hands stretching across the panels, and felt the last wall inside him crack, not with pain but with light. He reached out, taking Laura's hand in his right, Tom's in his left. 3 hands, scarred and trembling, linking for the first time since he was 5. "I spent years proving I didn't need you," he said, voice low but clear. "But maybe what I really needed was to choose you anyway. Not because I had to, because I'm strong enough to." Tears fell freely now from all 3. Outside, the string lights twinkled against the night sky. Inside, children's laughter still echoed faintly from the cleanup crew. And in that quiet gallery, surrounded by art born of pain and redemption, a family, fractured, imperfect, late, began the slow, magnificent work of becoming whole. The boy who had been abandoned on a doorstep had built an empire out of absence. But on this night, he discovered something far greater. That true power wasn't in rising alone. It was in turning back, extending a hand, and saying, "Come with me, the story isn't over." And somewhere in the distance, new doors opened, digital and real, for every child who had ever felt left behind. Because one man, forged in the fire of loss, had chosen to light the way home, not just for himself, for all of them,